On this episode of AV Week, lighting to replace Wi-Fi, virtual reality to make huddle rooms passé, Sonos loses round one in court. These stories and more on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing. Scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 214. We are the glue. Recorded September 25th, 2015. And welcome to another edition of AV Week. Welcome, everybody, to this show for the news and information in the integration world and a pro AV. We're glad to have you along. I'm George Tucker, your host. Tim is otherwise engaged. On this week's edition of AV Week, we have some special guests. First off, we have Melissa Dillman, the one and only. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today, George?
All right. Thanks for joining us today. And we also have Glenn Jystad. He is from InFocus, first-timer as well. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you here. Thank you for having me.
All right. And we have, from our Publishers Perspectives monthly stuff, Jonathan Blackwood. He is from Tech Decisions. That is from the EH Publications. Hi, Guy.
How's it going, guys?
All right. Nice to have you on. All right, guys. Well, first off, let's talk about a little interesting new technology. As I'm having Google problems, here we go. Electrical Contractor is talking about light conversion for data. This is called VLC, Visible Light Communications. Basically what it is they're using infrared or standard light to transmit data. I have some questions about this in the sense that, Melissa, I'm going to start with you. While this sounds interesting, and it has several neat little purposes that they recommend, this is a new technology, and my wonderment is, can we have this implemented with less frustration than we did, say, Wi-Fi and Ethernet, a short 5 to 10 years ago in this industry?
I suppose that if we go to lights that have IP addresses in every fixture, perhaps it'll be simpler. I can't imagine, though, and looking at this, I just can't imagine why I need it. It seems like there's an awful lot of data floating around with so many different signals that are moving through a space like that. To me, I can't justify it, but I suppose there's a place and a time for it that makes sense, but I haven't put my finger on it yet.
Well, Glenn, let me pose this to you within Focus. The article claims that the light spectrum that we can use is 10,000 times wider than the RF spectrum, which means that we could probably piggyback data on top of, say, projected images and projected displays. Does this sound like something that you would see maybe implemented widespread, or is there only a very specific use case for these kind of things?
This actually, to some extent, is a pretty exciting technology. I mean, the first thing for something like this is you make it possible and you get it out there, and then the world is going to take this and do much more creative things with it than we've ever thought. So the notion of bidirectional data over visual projection is something that we've never had a mechanism for, and so to look at something like this as a way to solve that, very possible. I think their goal is to really use this not for sort of a replacement to Bluetooth, but as a way to increase the overall bandwidth of the world. Find other ways to get fat pipes to connect different locations, and so whether it's something in a projection or it's a way that lights up Central Africa, this is an exciting technology. It's years from it having that kind of impact, but giving the industry technological options is an exciting thing in our industry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, George. I think to me, I've been doing a lot of IoT research, and to me, this is more of a marketing tool, and how I can collect more data on where I'm at in a retail space, or how long I'm spending in a certain area. To put it on top of projection, that could be an interesting use of this technology.
Well, and it is so. Jonathan, I send to you because Tech Decision Magazines has an educational sector. It has a corporate type of imprint that you do, right? So these very specific markets. The article makes pains to point out that that it can be used for, like Melissa said, the GPS, for very direct messaging to where you are specifically. I wonder if you see a use for it in the world of educational campuses and making that use instead of say digital signage, or in conjunction with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first thing I'll touch on is what was kind of pushed in the article, that retail spaces can use it for sort of an in-store GPS within the store, so that customers can find products, and using that, they can, from the marketing perspective, using what products that they're searching for and where they go within the store, they can gather a lot more. Retail stores can gather a lot more information about their customers. So going into the Internet of Things, it's a lot of data, and it's a lot of data management, and it's a lot more just specificity in what customers are looking for. As far as college campuses, absolutely. I'm thinking from something like a security standpoint. If there's some sort of active shooting on campus or something like that, and they can find out where people are in relation to the campus immediately, that's something that any college campus is going to be looking for, especially in today's climate. Obviously, the technology is further out, but you would imagine that, things along those lines aren't going to change too much moving forward, unless some very serious things happen that we don't need to get into. So other than that, just with visitors on campus needing to get around facilities, new students needing to get to classroom 321, and being able to just plug into their phone and look at it, and being able to distribute information just essentially through the air, as long as the room's lit up, from what I understand about the technology, will give professors a way to engage with their students, and students a way to engage with one another more dynamically, and in the same vein as some of these collaboration solutions that we see. But it seems like a lot quicker and a lot more robust as far as an education standpoint.
Melissa, one of the things I wanted to ask about, and this is sort of the million-dollar question, I guess. This is in a lighting contractor magazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this now puts electrical contractors in competition with the AV guys, or even more specifically the IT department?
Oh, wow. So now we want to invite the electrical contractors into our space. That ought to be a good time. Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily brings them more into our space. I think at the end of the day, you still need the AV guy to take all of this data, to take all of these different signals and make them all come together as one. So maybe they can do the actual install, but I don't know that it's going to be a big threat. If anything, it may be an opportunity for us again to try to be the glue that puts it all back together.
I think they're itching for revenge from the years of losing all those light switches to us.
I agree.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask one more then, and Glenn, I'm going to put this to you. We talk about the fact that we can use this as a transmission replacement. They make mention of this of being, say, transmitting via ultraviolet light or higher end frequencies between buildings or between campuses. Do we think this is maybe a safer option than microwave, or do you see this being feasible?
Well, I think it's going to coexist with other kinds of transforms, or directional transforms like microwave. This they may find this to be a more cost-effective way of joining buildings on a campus without digging trenches and running copper, for example. So that may be a way to facilitate substantially higher bandwidth on a campus environment. Microwave may not be the right technology for a campus environment.
And when they mentioned it, though, I have to say, all I can see in my head was the old, was the naval ships? I forget what the name of the devices they used to transmit the Morse code via light. I don't know. Just saw some guy up there trying to transmit it, going to shutter.
You know, George, I mean, as we're losing more and more of that RF space, as it's getting auctioned off in that white space, maybe it's a viable option in the future.
Interesting. All right, well, let's move on to another sort of groundbreaking technology, or at least they're trying to make it so. This is from our friends at AV Magazine. Virtual reality grows at a rapid pace and opens up new markets. Well, here's my question for you guys, then. Is it really a new market, or is this something that's very specific, like we went through with 3D and the rest? Glenn, I want to start with you on this. What are your thoughts on this being a sort of game changer, as they try to infer here?
I think it's exciting to sort of bring the element of reality into what are typically highly controlled broadcast environments, and if different VR technologies can expand the experience, then more to it.
All right. Jonathan, do you see this as something you would cover for your demographic and audience, or is this really just another clickbaity buzzword like 3D and, okay, I'll say IoT can be?
Actually, last summer I got a chance to try out the Oculus Rift as part of in Cambridge as part of a Marriott event. They essentially did some shooting at different locations, and you got into this like pod and put on the headphones, and they warped you to like Hawaii and at a building at the top of London. It was cool. It was definitely something that I enjoyed checking out. I don't see the application as far as a game changer goes. For video games, of course, the more immersive you can get it, you can get the user, the better they like the system. So I can see it having a big impact there. They mentioned things like flight simulations. I mean, in specific use cases like that, I can definitely see it being beneficial. As far as entertainment goes, yes, it'd be very cool to feel like you're sitting courtside at these games, but a lot of people, and especially with sports and things like that, it's a social thing. So cutting yourself off and throwing something on so that you can't be, talking to the person next to you or seeing how they're speaking to you. I'm just not sure how well people will take it. It does seem a lot like, 3D TV, where it's meant for the user, and that kind of takes away from the social aspect of it. I'll be interested to see how and if businesses utilize it, but I think it's got a ways to go before people start taking it seriously enough where they're going to devote the research and development into coming up with something that will be highly adopted to where it's worthwhile.
Melissa, I'll ask you a final question on this. Virtual reality, or as some call it, augmented reality, I'm not quite clear actually what the difference is, and maybe that's sort of a really problem for the marketplace. But is this something we could foresee being, say, the replacement to the huddle room? Who needs to build the room when you've got the room fixated on your head?
That's kind of sexy. I unfortunately, maybe I'm just biased, but I fall in that small category of people who just don't handle these effects very well. They make me nauseous. So for me, it's sort of a lost thing. But along the same lines, I don't know. I think the virtual reality overall gives you so much. You get so much information, and so many people have limited abilities to watch it for any length of time that I'm not sure the value. However, hanging around the back rows of Infocom, I saw some very cool holograms. Now, holograms are kind of running in that same arena. I'd like to see those come to play. And then holograms in your boardroom, yeah, that'd be great.
I think where the business world wants to go first is more to the immersive experience. That the remote imaging of people isn't a small screen or a small window on a screen, but it's something where it looks like you're looking through a window. Does it have to be 3D to be more dramatic? I don't think so. But moving from sort of limited experiences to immersive experiences, and then ultimately to sort of a reality or a virtual reality thing, There's definitely demand for that.
I mean, I've seen videos about graphic artists and things like that using 3D to immerse themselves and to do drawings within 3 dimensions, and that's what I'm talking about specific use cases. I just don't see that, like, replacing the huddle room. I don't see that it is that much more beneficial than just having your screen up there and kind of being in the actual world versus throwing the virtual reality helmet on and being able to see around. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves, but I just think that we've already kind of gotten the norm for the huddle room, and I don't see 3D adding to that. It feels more gimmicky to me.
To some extent, we have a cheap version of this, right? It is throw somebody with an iPhone out into the forest, and they join a hangout or a video conference, and just their ability to be mobile and move around, it dramatically changes the group's experience for having somebody being able to connect that's live and in a location. The next step of the remote people actually maybe seeing the picture of that forest surrounding them, that's a pretty exciting step forward too, or something like that. Not exactly what's listed in this article, but a direction for the industry for sure.
Interesting. All right. Well, another topic I want to bring up that's similar in vein of does it really matter and what are we really getting with this is Sony and their HDR. So Sony and their HDR, Sony adds HDR to 3 more 4K TVs, and this is from our friends at Twice. And by the way, a great newsletter if none of you have done it, twice.com. I love this site. All right, so HDR, the 3 more 4K TVs. They talk a lot about content from Netflix and others, but nothing from Sony that I see. I'm going to start off with you, Melissa. Is HDR really something we want to see? Is it really a good sort of add-on, or is this just we can do it, so we're going to?
HDR, getting into that high dynamic range, I think that's really what people are going to value out of 4K. I think over pixel count, over pixel count, it's more about the quality of the image. And what they're talking about when we move into this high dynamic range is that my shadows are going to be better. So I'll get different. I'm going to get different experiences in the lights and the darks versus what I'm getting right now. So, if I were to watch some of these shows, like, I don't know, Game of Thrones, I've heard it's a good show. The scenes are shot very dark, and I lose a lot of the detail. With HDR, I should be able to capture all that back and make it a better image. So I think that's really what people are looking for, but depending on whose version of it, everybody's doing a little something different in how they're encoding. So, but I do think it's important.
Jonathan, is this something where the sort of the end clients, the institutions, are looking at? And is HDR and UHD and 4K, is this vegetable soup a problem? Are we really causing more issues with all of this and not really defining it well enough? Or are they just rolling along and they're getting it?
I think that it is like a lot of relatively small add-ons to picture quality in that it's something that when it is the first, it's most likely going to be adopted across the board in one way or another within the next couple of years. And the difference between something with regular dynamic range versus high dynamic range, most companies, for the most part, unless they're showing off products and things like that, if they're just using it for digital signage in the office or they're just using it in the huddle space, they don't need high dynamic range. They don't need that extreme contrast between the lightest light and the darkest dark. I'll mention that the deal that Sony's doing with Amazon, where they give you $100 of HDR content with a few movies that aren't the greatest movies of all time, it feels very much like a ploy to get people to buy in now, because they even might have an idea that down the line they're not going to be the only ones with this technology. And it could just be a regular deal with Amazon and Sony to kind of boost the profile of both. But usually when you see something being given away like that on top of the announcement, it just feels to me like it's maybe not necessarily something that people are going to need. As far as within the corporate realm, I seriously doubt that a company, unless they just have unlimited funds and really money isn't a problem with them in the first place, I don't see them pushing up in price to get HDR in order just to show off their branding a little bit more, with a little bit more darkness and lightness in different spots. So I'd like to see if in a year and a half most TVs don't come with this, and if that's the case, then I guess I was wrong. But right now, I doubt that people are gonna pay premium just to get it.
No, I have to say it's my considered thought that the free is either a virus or it's a desperate plea. So either way, there's something that's afoot behind it always. The hook is there. Glenn, set us straight. Is this something of merit, or is there really just fluff behind this?
You know, this certainly seems to have more feet than 3D for consumers does. I mean, Melissa, to your point, you know, there just is forever going to be a number of people that don't enjoy 3D for the obvious reasons. If there's broad acceptance of HDR, and more importantly, if there becomes, you know, a sort of a street pride thing of, hey, do you have HDR? You know, oh, you know, then it could take off as something of as a reason why you buy a television with that capability. Is it a way to justify 4K? You know, we're sort of waiting for 4K content in the same way we'll be waiting for HDR content. So, you know, the world lapped up HD in a heartbeat just because it was such a substantial improvement. Whether it's 4K that ultimately matters or drives the purchase for HDR, you know, remains to be seen. My suspicion is that it's gonna be who's creating content and where are consumers really getting the hype out of. Probably going to lead with 4K, and HDR could fall away as the new version of 3D.
Might be an evolutionary bridge, as it were, to something more. All right, well, you know, all of this that we're talking about and these new technologies, and we have to know that our clients need this stuff. And from our friends at AV Network, determining what your client needs to do, the age-old question. This article goes on to talk about how we're sort of caught in a quandary between Scylla and Charybdis, I suppose is the way to put it. Thank you, Sting. That we don't always get to talk to the people who are going to use it. We get to talk to the people with the purse strings, and those decisions don't always mesh with what is really needed. So I'm going to start this off. I'll start again with you, Glenn. Why are we not looking towards the end user first? We seem to get caught in this trap, don't we?
You know, in the business world, there's no such thing as the end user, because exactly what you said, you know, the decision is easily a minimum three stakeholder decision, you know. Invariably, it's the IT person that it just sort of runs the shop. It's the guy with the purse strings, and then the people that are looking to improve their experience, the actual end user. With the Mondo Padded in Focus, you know, it was an innovative product, and there was a lot about it that excited many people. But as it was exposed to different companies, we've taken in feedback and requirements across the board, you know, and every single one of them wanted something particular, whether it's on the IT side or on the end user side or cost option side, whatever it is. And that's just business. And so, you know, you can't ignore the user, or you can't ignore the other parties just for the sake of the user. That's just business now.
You know, Melissa, I'm going to put this to you as well. Glenn makes some good points about that. It's just good business and that we should be paying attention. But does it even start back at the manufacturing side? I mean, we make a product that is designed to do something, gazingas to gazaukas or processing something. But how much thought goes into the process of where in the chain and how users are going to interface with it?
Well, I think it depends, of course, on what your product is. And I think sometimes we do get a little tunnel vision when it comes to manufacturing. We see how our product works, certainly within our own line, but then sometimes you can forget that there are a host of other products that are around it. So maybe that's where they get lost. thinking about how will this actually be used in the field. And sometimes, you get a surprise that people will find a way to use it that you weren't expecting. So certainly something we should all be considering. How effective will it be, and will they be able to figure it out? It's like Apple and why Apple works. You can pick an Apple device up, it just works. So I think that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, and it seems to be, yes, like the Apple example, they have an ecosystem that sort of predicts and can be flexible enough to accommodate that unique use or that odd use, although not always. The whole debate over their stylus and pen. Jonathan, I'm going to throw this one to you. What they're really talking about here is a service economy model in which you are very intimately related to your client from tip to toe. Do you see why? Do you think that this is a process that existed in the integrator world from the beginning, or has the conversion to IT being the decision makers, or the decider in the Bushisms, has exacerbated this at all?
I think it depends on who the integrator was. I'm sure that there were, I can't speak to going too far back, but I'm sure that there were always companies that took the end user into account like this. I think that what we're missing in this is that you can't blame the manufacturer to a certain extent. If the product doesn't work or it doesn't do something that it markets itself as being able to do, then yes, you blame the manufacturer. But when an integrator is being used by the end user, the point of the integrator is to be that bridge between what the manufactured product says it can do and what the end user needs it to do. And that's why they're building out these systems, and they're patching together multiple products to eventually come to the correct end. So I think that integrators do need to, especially today, it says in this article, go in for a day and really see what they're doing in the meetings to find out what needs to be done. And yes, that's a significant amount of time that you're devoting, and that's resources that you're devoting, and that's sales team members that you're devoting. But at the end of the project, when you come out with a system that management is happy with because it costs X amount of dollars, that the end user is happy with because it works how they need it to, and that the IT department is happy with because there's not too much troubleshooting or anything that they have to do to make sure that everything's working together, then that's capital for you in that you have happy customers, you have people that you can refer new customers to, and you're building complicated and interesting systems that you can help showcase moving forward. So I guess I think it should be up to the integrator to find out exactly what the company needs, even if the company might not be sure of it, and do everything within their power to make sure that's met. Now, not always is that going to work. You're going to have people that know better than you do, and you're going to have people that have their own ideas of what products want to be used, and they're never going to listen to you. And as the integrator, it is your job to give them what they ask for. I think that it's a relatively new concept across the board, but I think that that's because end users are becoming more educated on what systems are able to do, and when they're not, and when the system isn't doing what they need it to, they're holding the integrator responsible. So whether that's fair or not, the integrator is responsible to go out and find out what they really need and what they're going to be happy with.
Glenn, I'll throw this back to you for a moment. Is there a reason not to be this involved? Or rather, conversely, what can I make the argument to an integrator that the expense outlay, I'm not making money right there, it's not a billable hour, that this really works? I mean, I know Jonathan touched on some of this, but there is more to it, right? There's a relationship there.
There absolutely is. It's one of the things that in Focus we really cherish is our reseller network, and people that have been with InFocus for a very, very long time. They know and love our products as much as we do, and they appreciate in a lot of cases the complexity and the capabilities of different products, and they realize that their customers may buy a product for one use and not even know that they have capabilities for other things that they can do in their company. It becomes a win-win for the reseller when they can go back to their customer in update meetings, or just catch up with them and say, hey, by the way, did you know it could do this too? They end up looking like heroes because they get to help those customers evolve the way they do business or the way that they conduct themselves. And so there is a level of complexity for the advanced products, and there's just no way to expect the end users to fully understand everything that they can do with it. So it's an opportunity for those resellers to really look like champions.
And
Yeah, no. Yeah, go
if
ahead.
I can, George,
Mhm.
I teach a class for AQAV and teach a quality design class. And one of the things that people have challenges with in that class is that entire program is focused on the end user. Not the guy writing the check, not the architect, but the guy who's actually going to be in the room using the equipment. And it's a key component of that program. It's something we work on. And some of my students, it takes a minute for them to wrap their heads around. It's actually the person who's using the equipment. So it is an interesting approach.
Yeah, I have to agree, and it's sort of the realm of we always do it that way. This is the proper way, but the proper way is not always the most conducive to the business you have. I mean, look at the open platform or the open room that Facebook exhibited during their Periscope and Meerkat videos, where he showed that they had a place to talk, but it was open. The same concept here. Will we always do audio and huddle rooms this way? Well, maybe not for this use case in this particular company, and you can gain a lot of innovation by doing that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a very, I think it's a very good concept that companies, manufacturers have been using. I think the integrators need to understand that that's a cash outlay, that's a salesman spending more time, but brother, it's going to pay off in the long term.
As a manufacturer, you can take strategies. You can either decide that you know better than the end user and you're going to decide their experience, or you can do what this article suggests, which is go and listen and talk to the user and try to create products that match the way they do work already, and not have them reinvent themselves just to use technology.
Yeah, true. It's a very true statement. It's kind of shocking that it's still something we're grappling with, but I guess the models of economy don't always let you move. Or maybe we're aging out, and the new guys will make it happen. Speaking of, though, the innovations and what the client wants, a little kerfuffle going on between DM Holdings and Sonos. And here's something that affects all of these things we were just talking about. This is a lawsuit, if you haven't been watching it, where Sonos claims that DM or Denon is copying everything about their system with their Heos systems, from the name that's too similar to the marketing material to the presentation to the technology. It's a tight one, and what we're talking about in this one is that DM lost a big battle because they were trying to get all of the lawyers dismissed. Those lawyers at one point or another seem to have worked for DM Holdings in some capacity. The judge threw it out, saying, well, they seem to have been gone long before any of this came up, so no dice, guys. Here are my questions to you guys about that. First off, I'm going to start with you, Melissa. Do you think this is really an issue? Do you think there's anything really going on here, or is it just, oh, man, you figured out a way to get in our market, we don't like it?
Yeah, you're in my market. I think there's probably somewhere in the middle there's a truth, right? To me, looking at this, primarily what's it affect? It affects a bunch of attorneys who are going to get filthy rich off of it. And, I mean, it's an Apple iPhone fighting with, the Android version. They're pretty similar, but it's going to be a matter of who has the best product at the end of the day, regardless of how similar they are. So the attorneys, though, are going to eat well.
Yes, they always eat well. Glenn, does this really do anything to help us, though? I mean, by defining clear rules and what really is possession by someone, or are we really, and I hate to say it, that old trope, are we stifling innovation with these kind of lawsuits?
I've been building products for an awfully long time, and patents, trademarks, and copyright are there to protect the inventors to some extent. They're there to invent the inventors. The reality is it is a big legal game, and for a lot of companies, it's my stack of patents is bigger than your stack of patents, so I win. And in cases like this, you begin to wonder if the legal protection is impacting user choice. But that's the nature of patent. If you get a good patent, then you've got a period of time to monetize your invention. It's not forever, but you do get a period of time. And you have an obligation to protect it. So if Sonos has the patents, it's in their right and their obligation to try to protect it. A lot of times these kind of things just end up with an agreement on a royalty, a technology royalty, and they'll work it out in the end if that's what's best for customers and best for the business of both companies.
Yeah. Jonathan, I'm going to throw this to you, although this may not be your sort of area of expertise, but does it matter to the tech decision guys, to the corporate AV managers, or to the school managers who's making what and all this kerfuffle? They just want a product that works, no?
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what it comes down to. They just want a product that works, and they will likely not pay attention to this until either one or both products are out, and after all of this nonsense is behind the companies, that's when the end user will take a look and say, either I want this system or I want that system. Speaking to your point of earlier, it probably does do a bit to stifle creativity, and what I would say, it's not really a problem with these two companies because they're a bit established already, but you worry that a large company with a certain patent could go after a small company in legal and with legal fees bury them underneath them, even if it ends up being unsubstantiated. So that's something definitely to worry about, but as far as the end user goes, they're not paying attention to things until they're released.
True, and I guess styling is styling. I know many sites using the Apple look.
Yeah.
A long time ago, I worked for a company that we did something very innovative, and a very, very large company in the Pacific Northwest decided they would do something similar. And we ultimately won the patent violation or patent infringement case, but it was the end of the company regardless. So, patents are there to try to protect the small guy, but they don't guarantee the small guy gets the business opportunity. It's a war.
Yeah, indeed it is. Sorry, I had a little technical glitch there. We'll have to fix that later. So yeah, it's funny because I'm looking at the page and there is innovation in this industry that I fear that this kind of lawsuit will have a problem with. Specifically, I think, TDG is advertising there, Daniel Kipikash's company, that they could get affected by stuff like this because they're making speakers, and everybody tries to stomp on everybody about some patent they have with some speaker that, in the end, really doesn't turn out to be anything, and we sort of all lose interest because we just want stuff that looks nice and works really well. And I worry about that. Even, I guess, Jeremy Burkhart, who has his new, was it Origins? Acoustic, so there's cool stuff. All right, moving on to something that's kind of interesting, and we don't always cover hardware here, but I found this one a bit intriguing. It is a substitution audio signal for HDMI. It's an odd little box. I know in the Pro AV world, that meaning the world of staging and events, we've done this quite a bit. I know in some school systems you want to be able to override the system or the audio and put it right into the stream rather than have a distributed network of some sort. But this is an odd little box, and I have questions about it. Melissa, I'm going to start with you with this. I have questions that are somewhat technical, and you may or not have an answer to them, but can they really do this with HDCP? And what are they taking up in my chain to do this? Do we even...
Yeah, it's an interesting little box, and like you said, this is kind of a pre-show, pre-CD announcement. So they're leaving us hanging a little bit. I do worry about HDCP. That's going to be an interesting tell on how it can handle that, or what HDCP does when it sees it. Certainly HDCP 2. Is it compliant or not? Pulling out the audio, there are probably some specific areas this makes sense. There are other boxes I think we can do that with as well, but being that this is a CD announcement, it'll be interesting to see what else they can tell us about it. It's an interesting little box, got a nice price point, so we'll see what else comes to play with it as they release more information.
And Glenn, let me put this to you for just a second. Not accusing this company of anything, but there was in years past a number of small box companies who were making products that skirted the specs of HDMI and HDCP, specifically saying, we don't have to worry about that. Don't worry about it. We just subvert it. Is there a danger here in us either A, not being able to get something to a client because that spec won't allow it, or B, a company or an institution not really firming up their spec? I mean, do they let something like this fly if it's actually skirting it, or am I making a mountain out of a molehill?
Well, I mean, HTTP is out there to help the content creators trust our technology. As soon as things went digital, the audio video guys were bound and determined, or rather the video guys were bound and determined to make sure that Napster didn't happen to video. And they got all of the major tech players to agree to different protection schemes for the transfer of protected video between different devices. And that's how we ended up with HTTP. So, I suspect that, that there will be those that absolutely want to enforce the veracity of a protected environment and make sure that it doesn't expose their content to pirating. If products like this don't lend towards pirating, but lend towards sort of just a custom local experience like karaoke over a music video or something to that effect. Not that that is HTTP protected, but they may let it slide. I think that you'll see the lawyers, the army of lawyers come after them if they think it's a threat.
No, that's certainly true. Lawyers are everywhere. Yes,
I wonder, when looking at this, I kind of wonder what it'll do to the EDID chain too. I mean,
yes.
Is it going to pass it? What's it going to do in that process as well? Because all that information's already being passed along. How will it affect that? That could be interesting as well.
It's a very good point that I didn't even think of. I know I deal with EDID on the DVI side all the time here. Yes, live and event staging people, we still use DVI. Sorry. But yeah, it's a very good question because there's a whole host of issues, and I guess we'll find out at CEDIA whether they have solved them or they just ignore them. But it's a curious one to keep track of, especially as we try to develop stuff. Jonathan, real quick for you, this is just a little throwdown box. Are we looking at, in your side of the world, guys, looking more for systems all incorporated into one, say the ecosystem itself, or are the throwdown boxes the bread and butter of getting things done there?
No, I mean, they're looking for systems that do everything together. They're looking for the full ecosystem of things. End users are very much less concerned with the specific hardware that's behind a system than with the overall system and how it works. So I think that this is, it looks like a lot of other things that we've seen in the past, and it's definitely the price point helps out, and that'll help, especially within higher ed and K through 12. Specifically with systems in that space where schools might not have the type of capital that some companies have. It'll be helpful, but for the most part, as long as it works, they're much less concerned with how it works.
All right, well, that has to be our last. Let's start that again. Well, that has to be our last article. We have run out of time and a great conversation. The time flies when you have people who really know what they're talking about and really love to discuss this stuff. I want to thank our guests. First off, Melissa Dillman. She's from Kramer, and she is from home today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, George.
Where can they find out more about you and the company you work for?
Well, you can always find us at www.kramerus.com, or you can talk to me on Twitter at Melissa Dillman.
There you go. I also want to thank first-timer Glenn Jystad. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on. Great conversation with you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. As you know, in focus, the proud father of the MondoPad product out there, we're happy to include that in any discussion of AV.
Thank you. And where can they find out more about you and those products?
Well, certainly infocus.com. We have all of our products and all the information there. I'm available on Twitter at @gjystad.
Very cool. And, of course, another first-timer for us, Jonathan Blackwood. He's from Tech Decisions, NEH Publications. Sir, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I had a blast.
Where can they find out more about you and Tech Decisions?
Yeah, Tech Decisions has 4 verticals that are tailored toward the end user. So corporatetechdecisions.com, higheredtechdecisions.com, K through 12, K-12techdecisions.com, and worshiptechdecisions.com, and you can find me on Twitter at corporatetd.
Yes, and they're all very fine publications, and not just because they publish some of my work. This is a production of AVNation. It is a network built by you and me working AV professionals. You can see this and many more AV-centric shows at AVNationTV.com. Please join us there for more. We are supported by not just you and your viewership, but by our underwriters. Please give them a visit. There they are on our website. Very fine people, one and all. And they appreciate when you stop by and say, hey, thanks for underwriting that AVNation, guys. I want to thank everyone. A couple of notes for you to keep out for. AV Mag is having their AV Awards. I believe it's hashtag AV Award. Keep a look out for that. Also, we have a new show premiering next week. It is called Connected with Dave Danto. It is about Internet of Things and all the surrounding technologies. It's a very interesting show. Hope you join us for that. It will be a broadcast next week. Thanks so much for watching, and we look forward to speaking with all of you very soon.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.